Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday. It's Monday again, August 19th, 2024. Time for another show. Well, I guess it's getting to be about the time for another attempted Trump coup, I suppose, at some point. That back on my mind this morning because as I turn on social media and try and see what people are chatting about, well, it is, of course, among many other things, the Washington Post piece in which, did I even put it aside? I just commented on it, in which Donald Trump insists that the Democrats' decision prior to their convention, at which they will decide this week whom to nominate for the office of the President of the United States. That decision actually technically made earlier because they kept insisting that it be made earlier. It needs to be by a certain deadline, and then it was by that certain deadline. But the decision to replace Joe Biden at the top of the ticket with Kamala Harris, well, of course, that has thrown Trump's campaign into a frenzy. They are completely unprepared for dealing with him. I don't know whose fault that's supposed to be. I assume it's theirs. But they are, of course, looking to shift the blame. This, by Donald Trump's reckoning, is a coup. They're overthrowing a president by not renominating him. Well, you know how it can be with Donald Trump. Sometimes, whatever the hell it is he wishes were true, he just declares to be so. And that's all there is. That's the headline. Is it today's piece? Yeah, it is, August 19th. This was a coup, is the quote. Trump primes supporters to challenge a Harris win. Again, sort of missing the point. The Washington Post and others can't quite buy into the actual agenda here, which is more succinctly put, as we have always said on the show, that every Republican accusation is a confession. And perhaps at no point has it been, nor will it be, more important to understand this. It's not just a clever turn of phrase. It is just a succinct description of what's going on in the Republican Party. This was a coup, Trump warns, after having attempted a coup of his own on January 6th, 2021, and preparing to launch another coup if he loses on November 5th of this year. What else could there possibly be behind this? There's sore loserism, of course. That's what underlies it all. But again, consider what he did with his sore loserism on January 6, 2021. He attempted to overthrow the United States government and depose a president-elect and replace him with himself. So, an autogolpe, we were once reminded, was the name for this. Speaking of autogolpes, I guess, I don't know. Not really. I can't really make a connection to the autogolpe. But Greg Dworkin will be with us today. A miracle all by itself. Well, it's a miracle every Monday, I like to say. I'm going to begin liking to say that. And then, but as it turns out, many of you had wet weather over the weekend. Well, Connecticut had the wettest. So just shut up if you think yours was worse. I don't know. Apparently, they were in the eye. Well, I was going to say the eye of the storm, but I guess it's not actually a storm. We're in storm season. So when we say the eye of the storm, there are actual storms out there with eyes. I don't know what happened, but it rained a hell of a lot. And it rained a hell of a lot, not just in Connecticut, but in his area of Connecticut. And it flooded the area. So there was some chance that Greg was going to be knocked off the air. I'll let him give you the details of things if he wants to even spend time. We may not even have time for that. We may not have time for that because there's so many other stories going on. It's been a crazy weekend. It's getting to be that time. It is, the time before people are supposedly paying attention, but I don't know. I guess they're bored or Donald Trump just likes to do crazy things and we end up having to pay attention to it. And sometimes you can't help yourself. It was a crazy weekend. It was college return weekend for us here in Virginia. Not everybody, but everybody who's in Virginia had to deal with this past weekend. And so it was a little more difficult than usual to try to pay attention to the minute-by-minute developments online in social media where these things tend to happen. But it certainly got, I don't know, dumber, lower, worse, weirder. We knew that was going to happen. And so it did over the weekend. But Greg Dworkin is here. We're testing out a temporary rig today. What's going on?
Does it work?
I hear you, so it works.
Well, that's all that matters. You know.
Okay.
I hope everybody else can hear me, but I can hear you.
You know, we'll see.
I still can't see you because my monitor doesn't even have a camera.
Wow.
But that's okay. We wouldn't want that anyway. We've discussed over the years doing video, and each of us said, nah.
Yeah, well, you know, you got to maintain yourself.
Get out. So
yeah.
we're not doing that.
All right. Well, there's a little bit of, I don't know. It sounds a little different. There's a little bit of a, I don't know, hum or whistle of sorts. But
the hum or whistle of sorts is the laptop in the background that I'm using. My son lent me his laptop.
Son.
So I could quickly try to jerry-rig something yesterday. And so I got my microphone on it, and I got my
hamster
browser on it. Most of the stuff, Google lets you sort of sync your browser so all your tabs and
helpful.
Bookmarks come over.
That's nice.
Which meant that I could sign on to Skype because Google saved that, even though this is a different computer altogether. And so here we are. So we're happy about that. Yeah, we got slammed with water. I mean, I had 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches in my family room downstairs, which is where the computer is.
Oh man!
Which got a little sweaty.
Okay.
And then stopped working.
Okay. I mean, we hear about flooding and, problems of any kind. And, I'm imagining, oh my gosh, it's New Orleans. The house is floating away. But
well, that's what happened. I mean, I was not hit very hard at all compared to other people. And I'll get the computer fixed tomorrow when the mall reopens. It's closed today because of flooding. But I sent you some pictures.
That's a problem too. All right.
They're actually on there toward the bottom of floods. This is my local Starbucks where you can see the cars like completely underwater.
They just spilled the coffee. That's the only thing that happened.
Well, they stopped in for coffee and then found they couldn't leave because it was literally a flash flood. We got 9 inches in just an hour or two. And that's a lot. So some of the roads washed out. Some of the bridges overflowed their banks. The dam almost broke, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. So we'll see if we can dig ourselves out. So there's that, but here we are. Ta-da. And happy about being here.
Well, all right. And I'm happier to be here than at a Trump rally with the latest weirdness.
So the first thing I sent you.
I'll get to that. Ooh, I'm looking at your pictures. Yes.
Is Justin Walz.
The first thing. All right, Justin. Let's see.
It's a minute and 37 seconds of video. And while you're getting very good at doing this on the fly.
Okay, I'm working on it here. Let's see.
And while you do it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about a Jonathan Martin and J-Mart piece in Politico.
Yes,
which I think Kmart summarizes where we're at right here.
All right. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that, and I will scroll. This is a very tiny, thin. I got to open this window more because it's making scrolling take 25 minutes. This is a very thin window. Justin Wolfers. Okay. Yeah. All right. You go on ahead.
So, Jonathan Martin writes, one party brings back David Plouffe. The other brings back Corey Lewandowski. So who do you think is doing better? As Chicago, site of so many drama-filled conventions, gets underway, Democrats have mostly snuffed out the drama. So I wrote here on how Democrats have become what Republicans used to be. And by that I mean they're a healthier, better organized, more hierarchical, and even ruthless party.
Ooh.
Unified against Trump more than they are dedicated to any ideological project. They've adopted an Al Davis platform. Just win, baby. President Biden's going to give in? Good. Get in line behind Harris now.
Okay.
Vice President is discarding her now inconvenient left-wing proposals. I'm not going to argue that description because I don't even remember them and they don't matter. From her 2020 primary bid and airing tough on the border ads, nod. She's inviting a cast of Obama-era Democratic consultants onto the campaign she inherited from Biden. Salute.
Okay.
After so many years in which our British cousins have adopted American political tactics, Democrats finally took a page from Westminster. No, I told you they should because Westminster is used to really short elections. But he meant something different. When prime ministers struggle or become impediments to the party's success, their colleagues abandon them or pressure them until they step down. And media compares them to a lettuce, I might add.
Oh, right.
It's not personal. It's business. Hundreds of thousands of primary voters kept voting for zombie candidates, and Trump has done scarcely little to appeal to his critics in the party. In fact, he's continued to lash out at his best-known skeptics, many of them now out of office, and even current GOP office holders, popular ones like Brian Kemp. If a Democrat said, quote, "I don't want Bernie Sanders voters," even moderate Democrats would say, "You're out of your effing mind," said James Carville, the Democratic strategist, only he didn't say effing.
Oh, really? I'm surprised that he didn't.
So that's the basics of the party.
Oh,
in other words, the Democrats are clicking on all cylinders as they come into Chicago. And in his longer piece for Politico, this is from tweets, Jonathan Martin said, yeah, there are going to be some protests, but that's really not the major story. The major story is the Democrats have their shit together.
See, I knew something was going to get together. Okay. Well, all right. I think I have the other clip available.
So the other clip available is Justin Wolfers, the economist.
Okay.
Who's trying to evaluate this past week's comments on policy. The thing that media demands
everybody you gotta have
Kamala
policy.
Harris do.
Sure.
And gives Trump a pass. So can you play that?
What now? Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh. Okay.
What is your read of the Harris economic agenda?
I hear it really clearly.
Okay, good.
I think there's two sets of questions. There's how would you normally ask an economics professor to answer this? And I'm happy to go into that, but
I just thought he was crazy. So I'm going to screw out the English, but okay. Got it. Australian. This is Justin Wolfers, the Australian guy, answering what up with the whole Harris economy thing. Got it. All right.
I also think it's important to put this in context, which is we had Trump give a big economic speech in North Carolina a couple of days ago.
No, we didn't.
We had Harris give one today. Trump's speech about the economy was not about the economy.
There you go.
He rambled. It was incoherent. He wanted to talk about tampons and San Francisco and anything except the economy.
I missed that
Harris
part.
spoke about the economy. Trump's facts.
I mean, tampons are part of an economy, but it's not what
but he's making a pretty decent comparison, which reporters really need to do to put in context.
Yes, and I'm sure they were like, I can't believe he said that. But okay, let's roll on.
Were false. Tells us the price of bacon, for instance, is quadrupled. By contrast, Harris's facts are true. Which tells us the price of bread has risen by 50%. It's a real issue demanding real study. Trump's promised policies are neither promises nor policies. He says, for instance, I'm going to get rid of inflation. He doesn't actually tell us how. He says that what he's going to do is write an executive order that tells all his cabinet secretaries to come up with ideas for how to reduce inflation. That's not a policy. That's a process. Kamala Harris put forward a plan. It's one that we can all argue about and we can critique, but it's actually a plan. And I think the final thing is thinking about healthcare. Harris has said that she's all in on Obamacare. She wants to renew the subsidies. That's her healthcare plan. Trump wants to repeal Obamacare, and he's been promising us since 2016 that he'd have his replacement policy ready in 2 weeks' time. It's 2024, and we still don't know what it is.
That'll do it.
There's your summary right there of what's going on.
Well, all right. Good job, Justin Wolfers. Australian, but here, I assume? He is, right?
Yeah,
I never knew he was Australian, so that's why I figured he must be here and teaching and working.
He ain't in New Zealand, I'll tell you that.
Right. Well, the accent would have been even more difficult to understand. I love it. It's very clever sounding, but different. All right. I didn't realize he was Australian. I realized he had long hair, which I guess he's either cut or slicked back, but
That's an old picture.
Yeah.
That's also an old accent, you know.
Oh, yeah. He got rid of it.
He didn't sound like that
He's
anymore.
now from Brooklyn.
Yeah. Now he sounds like Robert De Niro. You know, that's just, it's evolution.
Are you planning to eliminate inflation with me?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see any other inflation around here. You must be. Okay. Well, that's not what happened. All right. Good. So, that was well evaluated.
My commentary on the pundit roundup today about what's going on is this. The current polls show Harris with a slight lead. The narrative, that's capitalized, should be in scare quotes, says you have to both call it a tie, even though it leans Harris. And for your readers and listeners, you have to make the assumption for them, otherwise they may not think this on their own, that nothing will change before the election in November. So you have to reinforce the fact that Harris cannot possibly improve, even though the Democratic National Convention 4-day commercial honeymoon starts tonight.
Yeah, right.
By the way, I saw some really, really nice pictures of what's going on in Chicago. At the place where the convention is going to be, the Democrats are doing these, projections. You can project the visions and hallucinations and 3D images and stuff on the buildings.
Is that right? Okay.
And so they have Harris Walz on the Democratic Convention.
All right.
And on Trump Tower, because there is one in Chicago, they have projected home of Project 2025.
Hey. Does they still have the Trump name on the tower?
Everybody in Chicago can see it. It's a wonderful commercial.
It is pretty cool. There's nothing you can do about it.
And there's nothing you can do about it. Exactly.
I like that. And, big convention. Is the convention at McCormick Place or whatever?
I don't know. I presume so.
Looked that
it's
up.
like enormous.
Yeah, it's huge.
And by the way,
we were there.
LA, Chicago, New York, that's where you have conventions because they can accommodate people.
Yeah.
You can't have it in Boston. Boston's a wonderful city. I love San Francisco. Not big enough.
And there's
the
thousands upon thousands of people.
Hotels don't exist. You can't get places.
Right.
A
lot of delegates, not walkers per se,
Well, a walk in San Francisco if you're older can be difficult.
Yeah, right. Well, Chicago, well practiced in this. And did they dye the river blue? They should. It's supposed to be blue, I guess, but no. All right. Well, all right. Kicks off tonight. You're going to, I assume, watch.
Absolutely.
Your TV didn't get flooded, right?
My TV, and more importantly, my PS5 didn't get touched. So.
Oh, okay. There should be a convention. They should come out. First team that comes out with a convention game. I was going to say wins, but probably actually loses.
Right. Diablo 4 Season 6 Democratic National Convention.
Okay. So that kicks off.
It's an online game.
And
you just have to destroy the demons. And so they've done that.
Job.
Jonathan Martin wrote about it, so that was the whole point.
Great.
So anyway,
yes.
Here would be my description of what's going on with the polls and where the race stands. If the election were held today, Harris might well win, but it's too close to be certain. But the election will not be held today.
Right.
The Democratic National Convention starts today. And Harris has the momentum while Trump's been somewhere between inconsistent and incoherent on the trail, as Justin Wolfers points out, especially when it comes to policy. In normal circumstances, there'd be time enough for Trump to bounce back. They'd do the Willie Horton stuff. They would
there's time.
Also everything.
Yes,
but these aren't normal circumstances, and Trump is far from normal.
Yeah. You could give him all the time in the world to bounce back. He's not going to
change. He is who he is.
Correct way.
So it's pretty clear which campaign is functioning at a high level and which isn't, and which campaign is having fun.
Yes.
And which isn't. So here's your next assignment, also about 1:30 or so.
Oh, okay. Let me see.
Next thing here, it's about it's a Franklin Leonard post, but it's about Coach Walz.
Okay. And this has video too? Franklin Leonard?
Yes.
Oh, wait a second. Correct. Hold on a second. I think I'm in the other. Oh, no. Was this the ASIN post? Have I missed?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. It has video. Okay. Well, here's what we have to do. Our process is it auto plays, but with the sound off. So here we go. All right. Rewinding it and give it a shot.
This is from C-SPAN.
Easy, especially now. Our politics are pretty ugly. Our politics has seemed pretty negative.
Now, I need some more sound on that. Yeah. Okay.
I want to set this up for you.
Okay.
This is Pennsylvania, slightly northwest of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So he's closer to Ohio than he is New York or New Jersey.
I see.
He's that end of Pennsylvania. And he's at a high school football practice.
Oh. All right.
Talking to the team.
Oh.
Because he's a coach. So go ahead.
All right. I boosted the sound a little bit. Let's see how this works. It seems to be in mono, in case anyone wants it. It's not that anybody here has mono. It's just that's the sound. Okay.
Politics is something that I know what I fear most is that young people turn away from it rather than turning into it. Politics isn't that much different than this. It's about something bigger than themselves. It's about setting a future goal and trying to reach it. It's about doing it with dignity and hard work. It's about doing it with humility. And when you lose, you walk across the field and you shake hands with the other team and know they played hard too. But we're all in it together to try and make it better. And things like investing in this public school and I can't imagine what this place looks like when it's filled with folks and the lights are on and the leaves are turning and that game's in the fourth quarter and somebody has to make that play. Somebody has to step up, and you look to each side of you and you know, I trust them. I trust them to make that play. Our country's not that different. Our neighbors want to be with you. Our neighbors want to do what's right. And the more we figure out that we're in this thing together and we have more in common than we have separated, we're going to do a heck of a lot better. So I have to tell you,
so
thanks
you
for taking some time.
Okay,
thanks for giving us the privilege to stand on this.
I'm wondering whether, I just got a note from Scott that said something's up with the I wonder whether that audio somehow didn't go through. So it was wonderful if you didn't hear it.
Well, it's coach talking to the team and giving them a motivational. You need to get into politics. It's just like football. You know, everybody pulls for everybody else. When you do it as a team and you work for a greater common goal, that's what politics is. That's what this is. You all know that. You all worked hard to get here. You all deserve to be on this field, and we got to do it together. And Harris and Emhoff are right behind him, sort of smiling as they listen to it. This is the coach talking to the football team. What I'm saying here is that this is what Vance and the Republicans fear about Coach Walz. They hate that he was in the military, but they fear that he is a All-American coach, and I don't mean all-star All-American. I mean he's like a Heartland USA coach.
Likes hot dogs.
Talking, bland, spices, everything that's that a used car salesman from Ohio thinks of himself, Walz actually is. And they're afraid of that.
Oh.
And I called him a class traitor like FDR was to his class. Yeah, it's a different class. But part of the reason they're so mad at him is because he's stealing everything they think they stand for but really don't. And he does. And yet he does it in a way that's, I'm for a Democrat. I'm okay with LGBTQ. I'm inclusive. I want to make this fun for everybody. This is great. And they hate it. And they hate him. And so they've spent so much more time trying to attack him than they have Kamala Harris. And in the process, they've lost the window to define Harris. And now comes the Democratic convention where she gets to define herself. It's over. They've lost it. They've missed it. And that's one of the reasons why Trump is so upset. So he's trying to travel the country now, every place a different stop this week in order to try to get more attention away from the Democratic National Convention. It's not going to work. And he just has nothing new to say. And, he's going to read the stage directions. Today I'm supposed to talk about crime, and the crime is my 2020 election was stolen, and so there's nothing you can do about it because he is who he is. It's just remarkable to me, as it turns out, and I don't know who saw this coming, just how perfect a pick Walz was. He's doing everything you would want in a vice president. He's a candidate for presidency as the vice president. He's the attack dog, but does it with Midwestern nice. You can't be that mad at him. He's the figure that brings back USA chants to Kamala rallies because it's just a natural fit for him. He's going to be doing Friday Night Lights. He's going to all of the districts that are frontline districts, as they like to call them, swing districts, with Democratic incumbents who asked him to come to the Friday night football game with them.
Yes, that's something.
He's got a tour schedule to do that. He's perfect for that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And I mean, as much as they will likely be supportive of Kamala Harris in her run for president, would they be inviting her? Come to the Friday night football game in my district. You can come by, but don't come Friday because everybody's going to be at the game. Come Saturday when we can come to your rally. That's nice, but no, this is something special.
It is. And, again, you're talking about a campaign that's clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah.
They've got the good sense, and they haven't done it yet, but they should send Kamala Harris to Hot Wings.
Yeah.
Or Hot Ones, I should call it. It's Hot Wings, but the show's called Hot Ones.
Oh,
if you're not familiar with it. It's basically a podcast where they give you in ascending order the hottest possible wings to eat while the host chats with you. You have to sit there and eat the hotter and hotter and hotter wings until the end of the show. Great. And they actually have a little meter on it, which shows you how hot it is in the relative scale. Wonderful. I think Kamala could handle that. Tim Walz likes his spices to be somewhere akin to pepper and nothing else. So what I'm saying is you don't send Kamala Harris to Friday Night Football. You send Walz. You don't send Walz to Hot Ones. You send Kamala Harris. And between them, they are a great team.
Yeah. And, not like she doesn't know what's going on in a football game either, by the way. And, right.
But you sent her to the cooking shows.
I guess.
Because she loves to cook, and she's so good at it and so natural when she talks about it.
Yeah. Well, she's going to be, it's going to be a fun campaign to watch. The spice thing, I guess, the Republicans did spend some time over the weekend trying to see if there was any there that, like, can we attack him over spices? No, not really. I mean, you don't like spice either.
Hot Ones, by the way, was when Conan O'Brien was on.
Oh, well, that's almost
you have to picture
guaranteed.
This redhead, fair-skinned guy, okay, and he's starting to eat hotter and hotter wings. Oh. And his face is getting redder and redder and redder. And he's saying, "This isn't hot. Give me something hot. I don't even taste it."
Knowing it's obvious. Yeah. Hot wings, man. I don't know. I mean.
Hot Ones, I think what it's called.
Well, I mean, just the food
but
itself. Hot wings.
Yum.
I like the wings and I like a little bit of the heat to it too. But, I mean, eventually it gets to be like, well, now I'm just punishing myself. What is happening here? This just hurts my face. I don't want to eat that.
But I'm telling you, it's very popular.
I'm sure it's very popular. Turning people colors and whatnot.
These are things I learned from my kid, and I'm borrowing my kid's laptop to do this show.
Right.
So I have to give him a little credit. He's the one that told me a couple of weeks ago, just before the debate, Dad, Biden has to drop out.
Oh, he told you. All right.
He was adamant about it. After the debate, he said,
well, that's a coup. You're going to be arrested, young man. Yeah. All right. Well, he was on it. That's good news.
Told me about Hot Ones. I'm just saying.
Did he? Okay. Well, I had not seen it, but I did see it mentioned. I saw a lot of people talking about it, and I was like, well, it's a show, but did I look it up?
Go watch the Conan O'Brien.
I did not.
I will. Just to get a flavor for it.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I think maybe somehow the fact that our second video clip was in mono, the one with Tim Walz, I hope people were able to hear it, but I'm not certain whether it was related. But
Well, I think I summarized what was on it if you couldn't hear it. But it's easy enough to find.
We're gonna go right. We're gonna go. Okay.
Yeah. The commentary here is from a guy named Damian Schubert, who is styled Zen of Design.
Okay.
.com on Blue Sky, he says.
Got it.
And he says, the fact that the right is more interested in disqualifying Walz than Harris is fascinating. My head's run through several theories.
Oh, okay.
Theory one is they know if they attack Harris, the MAGA base will go racist. I don't like this theory. It's too smart. Theory two, they view Walz as a traitor. That's what I was saying. Straight white male, veteran, and football coach with a keep government out of our lives streak. They can't handle it, basically, is what he's saying.
All right.
And then theory three, and they all can be true at the same time. Walz pointing out, Walz, not z, Walz.
Yes,
Forget the T, it's Walz with an S. Balls to the walls. Walz pointing out they are weird is much more dangerous to them. If a black gay trans person calls them weird, they can shrug that off. But Walz is solidly a normie dad.
Yeah.
When he calls you weird, it just sticks.
Yes, and also I think they know they're weird.
They do. That's why they carry around JD Vonce sperm cups.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I looked all night.
You shouldn't believe it, but you should, because that's what's going on here.
Yeah, and now early on there were. I don't know if you've all seen it. It's a late breaking thing, but it was widely shared all over social media because what are you crazy?
I would like James Carville to describe that scenario, please.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have a James Carville voice for that, but my God. So the premise of it is, well, okay. First of all, here's what it is. They actually have like, doctor's office sample cups, and they have a sticker on it with JD Vance's face, like the disembodied head which is weird, of JD Vance floating in the middle of the sticker. And then it's labeled JD Vance Full Family Kit. And this is their pushback at being, at being attacked, not even being called weird necessarily. This didn't really have that much to do with weird, but his growing number of current and previously discovered or rediscovered comments about, anybody who doesn't have kids is a childless cat lady or crazy or weird, and plus piling on the weirdo neo-Nazi leaning natalist theories. We have to have as many white babies as possible in order to something save the country.
The whole quiverful movement.
So from, all kinds
a while back.
Insanity. And so what they think is, We'll show you for calling us weird. We're not weird. We just want people to have so many white babies that if you can't, we'll give you. Now these cups, they had a sample in them. And
the subtext there is, we're going to have these babies. We didn't ask you. You're just going to do it.
Yeah, and they're going to be JD Vance's because he's such a virile man. How many kids does JD Vance have, by the way? If it's not 12, then I don't want to hear about it. Yeah, this would be the second natalist I've heard from who has like 3 kids. Like, whoops, you have one more than me. What are you talking about, natalist? If you call me when you have 11. But in the meantime, JD Vance, virile Superman, is the idea is he'll give you a family. He'll impregnate you. God damn it.
The whole thing is weird. I'm telling you.
That's not even the word for it. It's disgusting. And so they're running around with these things and they're showing off there's photos all over social media of people at a Trump rally holding up these
with a MAGA shirt or a MAGA hat, holding up these cups.
They have also on the latest Trump merch, which is the fight thing, with their pictures of Trump just having been shot, which also is a little weird. But they got the cups all over, and so somebody has called out early. Well, I think it's maybe it's somebody playing a joke on supporters, and it's not really something that they're doing on purpose and meaning it. But I looked all night to see whether the whole thing was called off. No, we found out it was fake or it was a plant or a hoax, but I have not seen that news. And it occurs to me also, by the way, that if they're really doing that and handing these things out in numbers, there is a staffer from the campaign somewhere with a U-Haul truck full of these things and whose job it was to put them together and find something that would look appropriately. Well, I was going to say look appropriate, but nothing looks appropriate. In a sample cup
with
from
their campaign
fertility clinic.
There is nothing whatsoever about what you described that you would look at and say, oh, they can't possibly have done that.
Yeah.
You look at it and say, oh, yeah, they possibly absolutely could.
Right. And then it makes you think, all right, if you spent the last week being convinced, all right, I finally heard the truth. No, the couch thing isn't real or whatever. And then you look at this and say,
But you look at the couch.
This may be worse than the couch. And they really did this.
You look at the cat ladies. You look at his opinions about inconvenient to have a child if you've been a victim of rape or incest. You look at this and you listen to attacks on Walz and you're saying, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean,
one guy's normal. The other guy's this.
Right.
Walz is a football coach who's talking to the team about how you move ahead and how you work together as a team. Mm-hmm. And JD Vance is JD Vance. I mean, so what else do you need to know?
If you're on team JD Vance, I don't know what I'd tell you, but it involves a cup of don't know what and I guess a turkey baster. And this is a rally. By the way, that's normal family for you. Good old fashioned American family values and, some You just choose a senator and ask him for a semen sample. Yeah, that's normal.
So Greg Sargent was summarizing some of the recent polls.
Church, what have you.
About how this is all going over. And he writes, even more striking is how various groups see Vance. He's viewed favorably by only 24% of independents versus 39% unfavorably. These are indies.
This will help.
He's viewed favorably by 23% of self-described moderates versus 41% unfavorable. Favorably by only 22% of 18 to 39-year-olds, 44% unfavorably.
Mm-hmm.
He's viewed favorably by only 32% of women versus 40% unfavorably. And interestingly, Vance fares a tad worse among men. So his whole men shtick isn't going on.
Yeah.
Because you know why? Walz is a coach.
I guess so. And
favorably by only 28% of Hispanics, 39% unfavorably, 9% of blacks versus 50% unfavorably, 32% of suburbanites favor, unfavorable, 42 and 33% of college-educated whites, striking 55% unfavorable. And by contrast, Walz is viewed positively on net by all of these groups, though his favorable ratings aren't high enough yet, but still, it's the only people that like him are non-college whites, but that's only by 9 points, and rural voters by 13 points.
Yeah.
And the people who love him are white evangelicals, which really gets to who the base of the Republican Party really are. So when you talk about MAGA, when you talk about base of the Republican Party, you're talking about white evangelicals. That's why you can't speak to them. You can't reason with them. They're nuts.
That is interesting. White evangelicals are not going to carry these cups around. I mean,
so you're looking at this and saying, so you're playing to them?
That's not for them. I just don't think so. This is for yahoos and coal rollers, I guess. Is who they think. But there was a lot of pictures of weirdo grandmas with those around too, and I'm not certain if they knew what they were. I don't know.
Every side has widow grandmas,
Weirdo
grandmas.
Yeah.
But I have a lovely one of two grandmas in Batman costume, pink Batman costumes.
Well, that is weird.
For Harris, I presume.
Yes.
And it's wonderful.
Well, yeah.
So that demographic gets out there.
There's no genetic material in it at all. That's terrific.
But as Greg Sargent writes, here's the trade-off that Trump made in picking Vance. Brimming with certainty he would win by a landslide before Kamala Harris became the Democratic candidate, Trump chose a running mate who would juice his base with little concern about his lack of appeal to voters outside it. Now, get your mind out of the gutter. We're just talking about politics here.
Greg Sargent. They know about this thing yet? Probably did. Greg knew. Come on. He saw it.
Greg knows everything. So a key weakness of MAGA has, by encouraging the Vance pick, seemingly produced a serious mistake. And this wasn't supposed to be necessary. After Republicans let Youngkin won 2021 Virginia on a propagandistically named parents' rights platform.
Yes. Yes, I do. No, and parents, yes. Genetic material, no. He did it right.
Some right-leaning thinkers began dreaming strategically placed, strategically packaged, right-populist, anti-woke politics might gain serious ground. Vance is supposed to be this project's next big success. Indeed, Vance-style right populism is supposed to help cement a whole new Republican and center-right coalition. In this account, the Democratic Party has been taken over by woke leftism, contempt for traditional families. That's why they hate Walz. And radical ideas on immigration and crime. That created Kamala's a cop. That doesn't work either for them. That created an opening for a right populism that unabashedly defends draconian immigration restrictions on communitarian and nationalist grounds and uses aggressive government policy to promote traditional families. Pair that with renunciation of the GOP's standard pro-plutocrat, anti-worker agenda, you've got a winning formula.
All right.
So the theory went.
And then just why not throw those cups in there?
But now the full range of Vance's own extreme views is emerging. His immigration skepticism is shaded into great replacement. His views about the virtues of childbearing have curdled into a demand that all good citizens must contribute many more birth children.
Here's some material to help you with that.
And,
they could have, by the way, they had the opportunity to go with, if they wanted to actually make that reference, like I said, they had the opportunity to go with turkey basters, which is gross, but it's worse. It's not as bad as the cups. Yeah. Okay. What's in the picture before I open it? Yeah.
It's from the Trump War Room.
Oh, okay.
It says, import the third world, become the third world.
Oh, I saw that.
And on the left is a nice, lovely brick house neighborhood with a American flag on the front porch.
Yes, sir.
Your neighborhood under Trump. And the other picture are apparently people of color doing something.
Yeah.
One of them is big gulping a soda, so it must be really threatening.
Yes, very dangerous.
And it says your neighborhood under Kamala.
Yeah, clearly very dangerous.
And the people of color here are extremely dark-skinned, which is how they love to portray all people of color.
Right. Meanwhile,
and it's just really weird. And basically, it's about as racist as you can get. And they're just like, they're there with it. They're not trying to do subtle. They're not trying to do, whispers.
Yeah. it's an interesting perspective. Of course, my neighborhood under Trump also now will include a bunch of dirtbags with sample cups.
Right. So Greg Sargent calls this an ethno-nationalist, natalist vision of our citizenship.
Natalist.
To be fair, Vance has more time to improve his image. To be fair, I say he doesn't. He is who he is.
Well, he's busy filling these cups.
And his weirdness aside, there's no denying he's a very articulate and capable spokesman for MAGA's various ideological obsessions. So that's true. He speaks directly to MAGA. The problem is, and no one else.
Right. Neckbeard pervert. Terrific choice. Okay. Well, I don't know how he'll resonate with the normal people, but apparently that's not going to work out. And and they're going right at it. They're not afraid to make things worse. So great. That's where we are. All right. And they're racist. Just thank you for throwing that in at the end. Okay. Boo. We don't like it. And it hasn't improved their standing at all over the weekend. And so on policy grounds, as Justin Wolfers points out, terrible. Right. On messaging grounds, as we've found out, horrific, disgusting, stomach churning. And then, although I guess this counts as messaging, also racist. Great.
That too.
Anything
so Matt
else?
McDermott points out from the last New York Times Siena poll, this is favorability among independents.
All right.
The independent portion of our voting population.
They depend on no one.
This is just so interesting. JD Vance in Arizona with independents.
Candlestick.
Favorable, unfavorable, 28-60. Minus 22%.
Okay. They independently arrived at the conclusion that he's terrible.
Tim Walz in Arizona, independents. 51-26, plus 25.
Positive. That doesn't happen anymore. Positive ratings. Okay.
North Carolina, Walz was plus 14, Georgia plus 1, Nevada plus 8.
Man.
And Vance is negative in all of them. The best he does is Nevada, where he's only minus 9, but he's minus 19 in North Carolina. But minus 22 in Arizona, where Walz is incredibly popular. And Empty Wheel, Marcy Wheeler and I came up with this theory at the same time.
Great.
It's got to be because looking at J.D. Vance instantly reminds Arizonans of Blake Masters.
Maybe.
Another Peter Thiel creation who basically is, somebody said, J.D. Vance is Blake Masters, but with skin. Blake Masters was one of the weirdest.
They're both weird looking
people who run for Senate.
People.
He had the pictures of him out in the desert with some sort of very large gun shooting at things saying, this is normal. And everybody looked at him and said, sir, this is weird. And we're not voting for you. So he's lost 3 elections in a row there. And Marcy and I think that independently thinks that independents are reminded of Blake Masters and say, yeah, no, we already did this.
All right. I mean, there's a number of people you could be reminded of, and certainly that would be the most resonant one in Arizona. It could remind you of, I just brought his name up the other day too. The original, Todd Aiken they don't look the same, but just weird things that you say. The judge, Roy Moore, who got banned from the local mall. That's weird. Flying around on one of Jeffrey Epstein's old planes and then trying to invoke Jeffrey Epstein against the other side, as JD Vonce did this weekend. Probably also a mistake. Just don't really bring up Jeffrey Epstein if you can. There's no call for that.
Don't rent this plane.
Don't rent this plane. Don't mention his name. Don't try. But again, I've said this morning, if you still think I'm kidding about that, or it's just too clever to say, well, every Republican accusation is a confession. Who brought up Jeffrey Epstein, and who's running with a guy who used to be Jeffrey Epstein's best friend and I don't know, I guess not drinking buddy, but, next door neighbor and hangout pal and come on over. And as I've said before also, there's a lot of politicians out there. This was by design. The Jeffrey Epstein plan was to invite lots of powerful and influential people to his house and entertain them. But there's only one person I know of from that whole list who invited Jeffrey Epstein to his house. And that happens to be the weirdest, craziest, most perverted and disgusting, can't keep his hands to himself presidential candidate in history, the one we have right now from the Republican Party. So I can't paint it any plainer.
So we're going to end today's segment by just pointing out where things are in the national race. This is from 538, which again, as I've mentioned, Chicago blessedly now calls and rebrands themselves. The number is 538 rather than trying to make you write it out.
Right.
Nate Silver was a stickler about, I don't want to do the numbers. I want you to write it out. Why? Because.
Right.
So
everyone loved doing that.
Elliot Morris is there. It's now 538. So simple and easy to do when you're trying to type it into a browser.
Like KFC.
Who's ahead in the national polls? And right now, as of August 18th.
That's today.
Maybe the 19th, yesterday. But yesterday was the last day they had polling.
As of today, as if today were yesterday.
Well, today we have yesterday's polls.
Right. There we go.
Harris, 46.4, Trump 43.8. She is ahead. It's a slight amount. Kennedy's standing steady at 5. That's RFK Jr.
No.
He's not going to get 5.
Forgot about him.
I think those votes are going to go to Harris. I think she wins, but that's where it stands right now. And looking at these are national polls. These are not state polls. But just looking at CBS YouGov that came out over the weekend, looking at Outward Intelligence, looking at Emerson, YouGov, Ipsos, Fox News, of the 10 or 12 polls that came out in the last few days, only Fox News has Trump up by 1, and RMG Research, the new Scott Rasmussen, has Trump up by 2. Every other poll has Harris up between 2 and 6, and that's how she gets her lead. So it's pretty clear that in the national polling she's leading, but this is really interesting. If you look at the individual state polls, and let's just do the 3 that matter, with all due respect to John Ralston,
and the other 47.
Nevada's not one of them. We're talking about Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So pick one of those, please.
Well, let's do the crucial one. Wisconsin.
Okay.
They have crucial Waukesha County in it.
Yes. So Harris 47.2, Trump 44.2 in Wisconsin.
Excellent.
Right. And then let's do Michigan, because there's always questions about the Arab population there, what that means. Harris is 46.5 and Trump 43.
All right.
And then the tipping point this year, which will be Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And in that one, Harris is 46.3 and Trump is 44.8. So in all of them, basically Harris is 46, Trump is 43 to 44. He's having trouble breaking 45. And, that may be where he winds up.
Good. I think maybe they got advised by Nate Silver there. I noticed at their rally, they had a sign up that said, for signing up for stuff, text Pennsylvania to whatever the number was. And I was just like, everybody loves texting Pennsylvania. Like they call it PA among themselves. Yeah, right. That's true. But I mean, like if you meet, I don't know if I've ever met someone from Connecticut that asked me if I was from CT, but I have run into people from Pennsylvania who say, are you from PA? I mean, they among themselves use the postal code. They know the name's too long. Text Pennsylvania. I haven't spelled it in 30 years. I'm not even certain that's right. I have to double check your sign. Probably a printing error on that.
Politico points out, by the way, that today the GOP House, remember them?
Yes, right. The Congress. I remember those guys.
They're so ridiculous and useless.
Yeah, well, they're on vacation.
The ridiculous and useless thing they're doing today is House GOP investigators accuse Biden of impeachable conduct in long-awaited report. Too late. He's not the nominee. Nobody cares. Nobody cared when you sent it, and he was the nominee. Nobody's going to care now when you send it, and he's not the nominee.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're recommending impeach him, abuse of power, and obstruction.
Right, for doing a thing that I remember.
Right? Because we want to charge Joe Biden with the same things that Donald Trump is charged with.
What do you know? It's almost as though every accusation was in fact a confession. That's cool. So as I understand it, they would like Kamala Harris to run as the incumbent in November. Good. All right.
So they know it's not going well. They pretty much wrapped up their investigation. In fact, as Politico reports, some Judiciary Committee Republicans have pushed to hold public hearings on impeachment articles. But Chair Jim Jordan doesn't really want to do that.
That's amazing because that guy will do anything.
Point?
Yeah. Give it to Mikey. He'll, right. Give it to Jim Jordan. He'll investigate it.
So they may issue a report and recommendations without actually having hearings, which would be consistent with what the GOP does because they can't do anything.
Yes. That is, that's very bad. And I think,
just as a process point of view, I love to bring up process.
Yes, you do.
It's not you that's obsessed with it. It's me.
Even Justin
so the
Wolford
whole point
said
is,
process.
How do you bring up impeachment articles without debating them?
Probably like you do it. Would you like to vote for what's behind door number 1?
Exactly.
What is it? You tell me.
After you vote.
Yeah, right. It's impeachment articles. Suckers, you impeach the president. Well, yeah, I don't know. You could do whatever you want, I suppose. Was there a huge complaint that there wasn't enough debate about the articles of impeachment against Trump, although he confessed all the crimes, so that was bad. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're not going to have hearings. They don't have time for hearings. It's August.
Right,
they're not coming back
until. We did our job. They only formalized the impeachment inquiry to, quote, try to have better standing in court to get documents, unquote.
Yeah, well.
And then he went on to say it didn't have anything to do with impeachment.
That's not
so. We're going to recommend that he be impeached. Because James Comer is not only a liar, he's stupid. Or I really should say, in all fairness, he's not only stupid, he's a liar.
I guess so. And I mean, he wasn't reading. The courts must be, the judges who care about these things must beside themselves. Like, we were very clear about when we would enable Congress to get additional investigative powers. And all you really had to do was say the magic words. And Comer won't say the magic words. He doesn't understand them. And so you can't come out and say, well, we only impeached him in order to get access to documents. No, you're supposed to say, and you have a legislative purpose and, something. What? I didn't read that part. I understand he's launching a new investigation, too, as I found out about over the weekend. The very good investigator is back. James Comer, who flopped on all fronts. They've decided that, we'll try one more time with the Benghazi formula, investigate the person running for president, except they can't think of anything to investigate. I don't know why they can't think of anything to investigate Kamala Harris for. They're going to launch an investigation of Tim Walz, and I am not even sure I know what the subject of the investigation is. I tried to guess, because at first they said we're going to investigate his retirement from the military. But then it turned out that there was nothing wrong with that and nobody cared.
First they were going to investigate how he let Milwaukee burn.
All right,
but that only lasted about 2 hours because the Walz campaign immediately released a phone conversation where Trump was saying, hey, you did a great job.
Right.
So and they dropped that like a hot potato.
People
don't even remember that anymore.
Okay. So I forget, and I think I might have put aside somewhere what they're going to try to investigate him for now, but it didn't matter.
Go get that, sorry.
That's fine. Those are the anti-flood guys, right? They come clean everything up. I can't blame you for that. Time to wrap things up anyway. So I appreciate, thank you to your son for lending you the laptop and allowing you to be on today. And we'll see whether there's a chance for you to break through and say anything else in between rings. No. Okay. So phone's ringing. Got to take the call and get the cleanup crew in there and the computer repair guys and all that. Thanks very much, Greg. We'll take care of everything heading into the break. No problem. You can passively let it all go and we'll take care of all of the technological aspects of it. All right. So did I put aside somewhere? I might have to just scroll back and look in social media if I can find my response when I noticed somewhere that Comer was going to launch a kind of investigation. It got drowned under pictures of these incredible photos from the rally where people are absolutely purposefully walking around with sample cups. It's really something. And so it was easy to bury the weekend's news that way. Because really, what else do you need to know about these guys once you have these pictures? Nothing. All right. But I'm scrolling back further, trying to find this thing. There we are. The very good investigator has logged on. I said in response to Helen Kennedy, who had the story of Comer in Politico. All right, great. Now we've got the source for it. We can open it up and find out what he was going to investigate for. The House Gops sets its sights on Walz. The House Oversight Committee, that's Comer, is opening an investigation, allegedly, into Democrats' vice presidential pick. That's Walz. Please tell us the story. Jordan Carney, won't you tell me? House Republicans are setting their sights on him. Why? The latest indication, oh, yes, that they're going after the political opponents. Yes. Why? Yes, right. On Friday, it was announced that he's opening an investigation into Walz's work. Oh, boy. In taking students to China. Yes, he's a Chinese communist, and there you go. That's the whole thing. Work related to China, including coordinating student trips. Comer has now sent the FBI director, Christopher Wray, a letter requesting a swath. That's a misuse of the words, I think. Swath of documents and any correspondence with Walz related to China. Americans should be deeply concerned that Governor Walz, Kamala Harris's vice presidential running mate. You know what? Who cares what the rest of the quote is? Doesn't matter. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Edwards Radio. Let me tell you the reasons why James Comer is dumb today. He gave a quote. As I told you, it doesn't matter. Something. Tim Walz, blah, 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 has a long-standing and cozy relationship with China, which, you know, I mean, they love to say that they hate people who have relationships with China, but, you know, I mean, does it matter that I point out the hypocrisy of Donald Trump saying, and President Xi, he came to Perva-Lago, and we had the most beautiful chocolate cake you ever saw, and he's such a leader, and he's very intelligent, and yada. And now, of course, we hate China, and we're going to get them. I was looking back not long ago at the video of Trump having returned from Walter Reed, where the doctors failed the trolley problem and saved his life from COVID. The first time he almost died. Anyway, he was, of course, at that point saying, China gave us this virus. China's going to pay a very high price for what they did to us. And, of course, he totally delivered on that. He's awesome. He's been yelling about China ever since. But he was yelling about China before. And then when the president of China came to the United States, he brought him to Mar-a-Lago and gave him beautiful chocolate cake because of how tough he is on China. So they figure they can pin it all on Tim Walz somehow. This is their Benghazi strategy all over again. We'll just investigate the people who are running against our candidates and say something corruption. And don't you see that there's an investigation ongoing? So that must mean something. But they've taken all the teeth out of that by attempting this already and failing at it. They've been going after Joe Biden and Hunter Biden to the point where it's a joke. If you actually invoke the name Hunter Biden, people are just like, oh my God. And not like, what a liability that is to Democrats, but what a liability it is to these idiot Republicans who keep saying, Hunter Biden's laptop, yargle! And you just say that's the mark of a weird person that has no connection to reality. This is a conspiracy theorist. The first person to bring up the name Hunter Biden is the craziest one in the room. Always. That's the test. So, what's the kernel of truth/story behind this made-up garbage from James Comer? Walz, in 1989, when Donald Trump was, by the way, in the Soviet Union looking to put up a Trump Tower in the then still communist Soviet Union in Moscow, Walz went to China as part of a Teach Abroad program. He also helped coordinate trips for students and has visited China more than 30 times, two details highlighted by Comer as part of the groundwork for his investigation. Comer and his Republicans by the same token, spent July 4th in Moscow as Putin's guests at one point because that was so super American of them. And then Trump's national security advisor choice sat next to Putin at a big banquet dinner for RT television. And something, then he was arrested, then he was convicted, then he was pardoned, yada, yada. I don't know what else to tell you. But okay, Walz's work related to China has become an early point of Gop criticism as the party recalibrates its November strategy toward Walz and Vice President Kamala Harris. But Walz has also been critical of China, particularly on human rights, which is the right way to be on China, as opposed to giving them cake. During his time in Congress, he served on the Congressional Executive Commission on China, which focuses on the issue. Throughout his career, Governor Walz has stood up to the CCP, fought for human rights and democracy. This is like the good guys quote here. But it frankly also doesn't matter very much. Of course, he was doing the right thing with respect to China. He's not a Chinese operative, and there's just nothing you can do about it. No way to make him into it. No point in addressing any concerns that he might be one, because he isn't. A spokesperson for the Oversight Committee, Democrats, in a statement, called Comer's investigation, quote, nothing more than a political stunt to aid the former president, Trump, while he ignores Trump's cozy relationships with dictators, including China's Xi. There's only one who had beautiful chocolate cake with him. That's problematic if you are a Trump fan. Comer has launched sweeping investigations into Chinese entities as part of his work as chair of the House Oversight Committee. He's supposed to be overseeing what goes on in the United States and leaving these sorts of investigations to other people, but he doesn't know that. So this part of his work, I guess, as he defines it, as chair of the House Oversight Committee, which is a broad jurisdictional lane, but he has also used the panel to delve into the party's political opponents. That would be the Republican Party's political opponents. While he told Politico that he wouldn't be calling Harris in, he recently requested documents related to her work on the U.S.-Mexico border. Mexico, China, whatever. His most high-profile investigation, co-leading an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden that largely focused on the business deals of his family members in Ukraine as well. So Ukraine, China, Mexico, anything. Well, it has quietly wrapped after months. Republicans, however, don't have the votes to impeach Biden after investigators failed to convince dozens of their colleagues that Biden had committed a crime or an impeachable offense. So the whole thing has come to nothing. And now they're releasing their report, which announces that the whole thing has come to nothing. And the reaction from Comer, let's do this to somebody else on some other premise because of how effective it's been and how much time there is between now and the election and how much of that time is going to be spent on recess. So a very, very dumb plan. Not surprisingly, the result of some very, very dumb thinking by a very, very dumb guy. He's really just not very good at what he does. Okay, what else can I tell you? Well, how about this? Nothing. There's no more news. Here we can carry a few things over. Georgia has been on your mind because that's the way the song goes, and because we spent so much time last week talking about what the Trump team had in store for Georgia. We were in the middle. I think we got a little bit of the way through reading the story in Rolling Stone, which was a follow-up to the story in, I don't remember anymore, about what was going on in preparation for stealing the election, as Trump would have it, in Georgia. And we wanted to see whether Rolling Stone had any more close detail about exactly what was going on in Georgia. The story, long story short of it, essentially was that last time around, they attempted to convince the top elections officials, and in particular, Brad Raffensperger, Secretary of State, at the very late date of like January 3rd or so, I think, 2021, that he could and should somehow either reverse the official outcome of the election in Georgia or somehow at least put a stop to the official declaration that Georgia's electoral votes were properly cast by electors for Joe Biden. But that had been done on December 14th. So it was really something that on January 3rd, Donald Trump and his advisors, including his legal representation, Cleta Mitchell, on the phone, really thought that there was anything that could be done on January 3rd. But they're just operating on the theory of, well, if we just, with blunt force, get a person who's got some official power occasionally to weigh in on the outcome of elections and who is the actual, to certify the winner. If we just get them to say, I changed my mind at some point in early December, I certified that Joe Biden was the winner, which clears the way for the Electoral College to meet on December 14th and to know which electors to admit to the Georgia Capitol building to cast their electoral ballots. That went to the electors for Joe Biden. We held that process. They cast their votes. They certified that they were voting for Joe Biden and passed those papers on to state officials like the governor. And together with the governor, we certified that those were indeed the votes of the people who were indeed supposed to be the electors. Everything gets certified, right? And it was being sent on to Washington. It probably had already arrived in Washington. It was January 3rd. They're calling the Secretary of State in Georgia to say, well, for one thing, all we need to do to win Georgia is find, I forget what the number was. Maybe I don't forget. 11,870 votes. And then what you would say is, well, one, I found them. They were under a rock, and I found them. And now Donald Trump, we find, really should have been the winner. Yes, we certified the other guy. Yeah, we held the Electoral College vote. Yeah, we certified that vote. Yeah, we sent those certificates to Washington, D.C. But now, January 3rd, 3 days before they open the envelopes in Washington, we were hoping that you, as Secretary of State of Georgia, would say, F the country. The whole thing is, I changed my mind. Donald Trump's electors should have been the ones admitted to the state capitol. I take it all back, having signed these documents before. I take it all back, and we found 11,870 votes, and it turns out that I want Donald Trump's electors' votes to be counted. That was the plan. And Brad Raffensperger and the governor, Brian Kemp, to whom they also appealed, and a number of other officials said, that's just not a thing that can be done. We certainly don't have a process for that, and we don't have the power to do that. My power with respect to what there is I can do with electoral college votes has been exercised. It's done. And there is no opportunity for me to change my mind about that, not to mention no grounds for me to change my mind for that. But I also don't have the authority to recall this thing. If they couldn't just issue a new certificate, they were then to say, well, why don't you call Georgia's state legislature into session? And they we think, have the power to just pass a new law and a new resolution that says, that other certificate is wrong. This is the new one and it's right. So please do that. Well, no, we're not going to do that either. We may or may not have the authority. As Secretary of State, I certainly don't have the authority to call a special session of the legislature. But no, none of the things you want are within my power anymore. So actually, I mean, one of the things that was important about these two articles was that the Georgia state legislature, run by Republicans overwhelmingly, spent the last couple of years passing new laws that would give some of these officials some of these powers. It still wouldn't have fixed the January 3rd situation, but it would give them power to intervene at earlier dates if they wanted to, if they felt like it. Presumably if they had grounds for it, but they don't even really have to have the grounds for it. That's what the tragedy of these new laws. But they would still have to do it earlier on. And there's still nothing, I don't think, about these Georgia laws that grants authority to the Secretary of State, anyway, at any point to say, we've already had the Electoral College convene on December 14th and cast their votes. In this case, let's say for Kamala Harris. But we want to undo that. I don't think there's anything about that, but there is, opportunity now, legal authority for people, elections officials to intervene earlier than that and say, we think that the results should be called into question such that we are not going to sign off on certainly not going to sign off on Kamala Harris's named electors being admitted to the Capitol building on the 14th to cast those votes. We're just not going to certify that. And if they do go in there and they cast their votes and they look to us to certify that they are the actual electors and have cast their votes thus, we may not do it. That is apparently now within their authority. And that's problematic because Raffensperger, as firm as he was in insisting that he wouldn't do what Trump wanted, was also on firm ground in saying, I can't do what you want. I do not have the legal authority. Some of that legal authority has now been granted, and it's now open to question whether Brad Raffensperger will still say, well, I have certain authority, but you're still wrong about who won Georgia, so I can't help you. I'm that kind of person. Or is it, well, the law says I can do what I want with this, so I guess I'll do what I want, which is to say I want Republicans to win. So anyway, that's where we are, and that's what they've been up to. And I'm trying to remember how much of the Rolling Stone article we actually got through. And I'll scroll through. Oh, I definitely see that some of the names that were difficult to pronounce were read out. And did we, in fact, get to the end of the article? I should scroll down to the end and see whether that is familiar. Yeah, no, I don't think we read that. So as I scroll backwards up from the top and look for familiar ground, we will see what's going on. All right. Well, there's a couple of, okay. I think I recognize some of this stuff. I guess we probably ended around here. So let's see if there's new information here. The Georgia State Election Board's certification rule and the reopening of the case against Fulton County. Those are two things that they tried to accomplish. And they weren't the only controversial actions taken by Trump's pit bulls. Remember them? The pit bulls on the board last week, the elections board. The board also passed a measure requiring more complex rules for what absentee ballots must look like, more rules for depositing absentee ballot into drop boxes, and constant video surveillance on those drop boxes, which has long been a white whale, no racist pun intended, of the election denial movement, and was infamously featured in the debunked election conspiracy documentary, which means it's not a documentary at all, 2,000 Mules, the distributors of which no longer stand behind it and refuse to endorse it if anybody gets a hold of a copy of either the movie or the book. So anyway, yes. There's, in addition to authorizing new activity by elections officials, they are doing more of their favorite voter suppression stuff. It's harder to, the absentee ballots need to be confusing and dumb. They need to have arbitrary rules about processing them so that we can claim that minorities who submitted absentee ballots didn't follow the rules correctly and we can throw their ballots out. And then, of course, depositing ballots into drop boxes. If somebody, their big concern is that they're stuffing ballot boxes. So if anybody is seen dropping more than one ballot into a box, you're in trouble. Except, it shouldn't be. What's the problem? If the ballot's been properly signed and sealed by another voter, it shouldn't matter whether or not that voter's hands put it into the box, but that's what they're going with. While the board's actions last week may seem unmoored from the reality of election facts, and they do, the Trumpian takeover of the board shouldn't come as a surprise. The Trump team sees Georgia as their, quote, laboratory for a campaign that increasingly looks like it's designed not necessarily to win Georgia, but to call a Trump loss here into question. And at the center of those efforts is Fulton County. Dramatic music plays. Why Fulton County? Because, of course, the state's largest county has been home to the black political power structure of the South since its pivotal role in the civil rights movement. Since 2020, election conspiracists have worked feverishly to prove, or even just make other people believe the allegations, that Democrats cheated in Fulton County and are planning to do so again. What does that mean? Every Republican accusation being a confession. Republicans cheated, maybe not in Fulton County, but they certainly tried to bend Fulton County to their will and cheated elsewhere, and they are, as they say here about Democrats, planning to do so again. Their shaky proof behind their false claims of coordinated election fraud stems from an audit conducted after Trump's loss in 2020. The audit, overseen by Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, found that election workers in Fulton County had mistakenly double-counted some 3,600 ballots. Now remember how many votes they needed? 11,870. Does 3,600 double-counting ballots do anything to the result? No. But do you want that to happen? No. Do you stand on that claim and say, well, we found 3,600, but that just means that there were 36 million, really? Well, I guess if you're a Republican, you try and do that. The audit eventually found that Trump had garnered 345 more votes than were initially counted in Fulton County. Trump still lost to President Joe Biden by 243,000 votes, but he claimed that the duplicate ballots were evidence of, quote, a lot of crime. So why were they looking for 11,870? I don't really know. At the time, they thought that was the number. Despite the findings, election denial activists have never let up on the Fulton County case. The findings having been, of course, that there was no problem with the counting of the vote that would have changed the outcome. In its resolution on the case last week, the state election board instructed Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr, a Republican, to, quote, immediately investigate with outside investigators the errors in Fulton County. We are putting this board in legal jeopardy, Fervier said just before being outvoted by Jeffries, Johnston, and King to reopen the Fulton County case. Please make sure the votes are in the record for any potential future litigation. If you're going to have some litigation, I want you to know I voted no on this crap, and the yes votes came from the three idiots over here. Less than a few hours later, Trump took to Truth Social backing the decision, almost as if it had been coordinated. The Attorney General of Georgia must, caps for that one, must get moving on this, Trump wrote, so must Governor Kemp and the Secretary of State. It's Fulton County again, because coming up with a different and new idea was too much for us. Except the thing is, as they point out helpfully in Rolling Stone, it's not happening, quote, again. It's not happening at all. It never happened the first time. It can't happen again. Didn't happen the first time. And it's not happening now. Fulton County was already punished for its workers erroneously double counting ballots. Those errors were nowhere close to enough for Trump to overcome his loss to Biden. Following Raffensperger and the state election board's investigation into the ordeal, Fulton County complied with a reprimand from the board and implemented policies that the county says will alleviate the issue of double counting ballots in the future. I don't mean, you make a mistake. I don't know if you can alleviate the mistake by saying, well, it won't happen again. You can try your best, but, and implement safeguards, but okay. But that's all that would ever have been demanded. But somehow something, yargle bargle, I guess. We will not engage in any further discussions, investigations, or other action related to this case, Fulton County spokesperson Jessica Corbett said in a statement. To do so would be a waste of taxpayer dollars and time that is best spent preparing for the upcoming general election, not rehashing the old one, I guess. It will now be up to Carr, the Attorney General, to determine whether to charge anyone in Fulton County with a crime for double counting ballots in an election in which Trump lost the state by almost 12,000 votes. Trump will surely be watching. There's the 11,870. Where was okay. So he must have lost Fulton County by 243,000 votes. But overall, there you go. Finally, an explanation that makes some sense. Overall, lost the state of Georgia by a much closer margin. Like Kemp, who Trump has once again targeted and belittled for refusing to help Trump overturn election results in Georgia in 2020, although he really asked for that help in 2021. The former president has also taken aim at Carr. In 2022, Trump endorsed Carr's challenger in a Republican primary that Carr won. Good job there, Trump. Going on to defeat a Democrat and hold on to his position as Attorney General, Carr has repeatedly said that Trump lost in Georgia fair and square and that the 2020 election was not beset with widespread election fraud. In a statement to the Associated Press, Carr's office said that it takes election integrity very seriously, and we will apply the Constitution, the law, and the facts as we always have done. If Carr is, quote, unwilling/unable to investigate, the board resolution states the board will seek outside counsel to conduct the investigation. A concern for Democrats and voting rights advocates in the state who fear the board will align itself with a right-wing group to pursue a politically motivated investigation of Fulton County in the name of proving non-existent fraud, not unlike what they did in Arizona, and embarrassed themselves, I would add. That's already the case for Adams, the pro-Trump election board member in Fulton County who sued her own county, demanding more power to refuse to certify election results based on nothing. Adams' lawsuit was filed by lawyers with the Trump-aligned America First Policy Institute. Kathy Woolard, a Democrat and former chair of the Fulton County Board of Elections, tells Rolling Stone that the state election board's revival of the case and its implementation of rules demanded by election deniers is a troubling sign of Trumpian chaos to come in November. It's particularly concerning that the state election board is indulging and in some cases collaborating with conspiracy theorists who have been refuted time and again. Woolard says it's time for them to be replaced with board members who will adhere to the rule of law and not sow chaos in our election system. That's it. We made it to the end of the Rolling Stone piece. Now I've got an email here from listener and friend of the show, Christine on 16, who sends us a bit of good news in Georgia. Actually, a link to the Brennan Center for Justice, brennancenter.org. What do they have here? The Brennan Center, the NAACP, and the League of Women Voters are on the case. That's the good news. Opposing Trump's 3 so-called pit bulls on the Georgia Board of Elections. Let's see what we can get to before our break. Adams v. Fulton County Board of Elections. That's the lawsuit we were just talking about at the very end of the Rolling Stone article. The local official, Adams, is asking a Georgia court to overhaul centuries-old law, to allow local officials to refuse to certify election results based on nothing. Just their feelings is what she's asking for. The Brennan Center, along with co-counsel from Protect Democracy, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and Crevelin and Horst LLC, law firm, filed a friend of the court brief on behalf of civil rights organizations supporting the defendant's motion to dismiss. That's good news. You can download the whole brief to read it if you wish. And a little article that accompanies this. Certification, the statutory process by which officials sign off on the completion of election results, usually serves as an important but uneventful formality. Immediately after an election takes place, poll workers and local elections officials begin a rigorous multi-step process to accurately determine the results. Once the results have been tabulated and verified, count them, add them up, double check your math. Then local officials certify or sign off on the completion of the process. I hereby certify on penalty of perjury that I observed this whole process and saw that the math added up and so won. The end. I certify it. That's what they take with them to the state capitol. This sign-off is not intended to verify the final vote count, but rather to confirm that the verification process already took place. Local certifying officials must follow detailed state statutes and regulations when they certify, and those frameworks establish that they must leave any allegations of fraud or misconduct to the courts that hear post-election challenges and criminal proceedings. In short, certification leaves no room for local certifying officials to investigate elections or take legal questions into their own hands. That's what they've tried to change. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We got half an hour left to tell you more about what's going on in Georgia. Let's read through the rest of this brief write-up accompanying the amicus brief filed by the Brennan Center about what's going on in Georgia. And I know it seems tedious in its process stuff, but everyone kind of understands, right? I think, certainly in this audience, although out there in the broader world, I'm certain that the election deniers don't understand it. But you know what they like to stand up and scream about? Oh, we need verifiable paper ballots and a hand count of all of things. And there's various reasons why that's impractical or impracticable in terms of getting the votes counted ahead of time. It's just a matter of the mathematics. They don't really understand how long it actually takes to hand count paper ballots and verify all of that, right? They think, all right, everybody gets a stack of 20 ballots and then you count them up and you tell everybody what your results are. And then, of course, they realize pretty quickly, well, you got to have somebody else verify that too. Otherwise, a Trump fan counts 20 ballots and says it's 20-0 for Trump. And if they just let it go at that, well, it's faster, but it's not necessarily accurate. You got to let somebody else who might not be a Trump fan and who is going to be fair, or at the very least, let a Trump fan count them and then let a Harris fan count. And then it's weird. It's 20-0 Trump, according to the Trump fan, and it's 18-2 for Harris, according to the Harris fan. What are we going to do? And how long does it take to assemble a group that everybody can agree is counting accurately? And I mean, what do you do? Like, what do you do if there's 5 people who are charged with or who are granted the authority to do the counting and they just can't agree on what's the outcome among these 20 votes? And 3 of the people on the board just insist that it literally is 20-0 for Trump, when there are no more than, what if the other two are like, well, we counted, as much as we would like to have made it 20-0 for Harris, it isn't. It's 18-2 for Harris. That's what these ballots say. Look at the ballots, lay them all out, and you lay them out end to end, and there are still 3 people who say, I don't care what you think you see in front of you. I will only certify it. I will only put my signature on the document that I'm required to sign by law. You can't move my hand. I'm only going to sign it if that thing says 20-0 for Trump. Well, why? You can see the ballots in front of you. And if they say, yargle bargle, lizard people, vampire pedophiles, what do you do? It's clearly not true. Your reasons are stupid. You're clearly an idiot. What do? I don't know. And in Georgia, the answer is you let the people who say yargle bargle, vampire pedophile control. And you say, I'm sorry. 3 people say that it should be 20-0. There needs to be, at the minimum, an investigation. Why do 3 people say it's 20-0 and 2 people say it's 18-2? Well, because 3 people are crazy, idiot partisans. No, what if the answer is China or Venezuela and Hugo Chavez, who died in 2013, did this thing? Everybody would be able to see that it's 20-0 if they put on their special glasses. But you people are biased against special glasses. How long is it going to take to get through this? Well, a lot longer if we do things like this. And even if we just count and normal people do the counting and the results are pretty much what you would expect to see, and both parties, observers, agree that the counters have done it right. And then you send it all into the county, and the county totals up their precincts, and each county sends it to the state, and the state does the whole thing by total, by county. And again, that's how the thing will work, right? A precinct that has collected X number of votes will count the damn things, count them 5 times, see if everybody agrees what the count is, and when they do, they certify the results. They don't take all the ballots and then send them to the county and have the county count them all over again. They turn the ballots over to the county for purposes of securing them in case there needs to be a recount. Yes, but they basically say, we counted. There were 1,000 ballots here. Well, it's a precinct. There were 100 ballots here, and these are our results. And every precinct calls in to the county headquarters, and the county says, we have 100 precincts. Did everybody report? Yes. Did you write down the numbers? Yes. Does everybody agree that these are the numbers for each precinct? Yes. How do we know those are the numbers for each precinct? Precinct officials have signed a sworn statement on penalty of perjury. Even if they're lying their asses off, they do have to sign this thing. That says these are the results. Unless, of course, they say, I refuse to sign. And then you have a problem. Why do you refuse to sign? Because lizard people. Oh, no. But even if they do it all correct, the way it works, right? The people who count the ballots write down, we agree. This is the number. Send it to the county. The county says, we have 100 precincts. We added up the numbers from the 100 precincts. Everybody can see what the numbers are. Does everyone agree? Has everyone triple checked on a calculator? This is your answer for how many votes were cast for each candidate in this county? Yes. Then write down, I certify that this is the answer. Sign it. That's certification. What happens if a precinct person says, I refuse, but they convince them and they send it on to the county, and then a county person says, well, I refuse because lizard people, and they defeat that guy and they send it on to the state. We have 99 counties in this state. Does everybody understand that these are the numbers? Yes. How do we know these are the numbers? Because county officials have sworn on penalty of perjury that those are the numbers. Why do they feel so confident? Because precinct officials have signed on penalty of perjury documents saying these are the numbers. Everybody trusts the numbers from below because they've signed the documents certifying you can take me to court and charge me with perjury if I F this up. Okay. Then I'll take your word for it. And then the state adds it up. How many people voted for this one? How many people voted for that one? The winner is X. And guess what? Come December 14th, we want the people representing the person with the most votes in this state, as certified by the precincts and the counties and the state, to go to the state capitol and cast those electoral ballots. They're entitled to do so because state people have sworn that's the case based on the sworn statements of county people who say that's the case, based on the sworn statements of precinct people who say that's the case, based on the number of ballots we counted together and gave over step by step. That's how the certification process works. But what if one person, 3 people, at each one of the 3 steps says, I don't care what you can see with your own eyes. I'm insane. I love talking about vampire pedophiles, and I'm not going to certify. Courts are going to say, where's the signature on here that tells us that this is the correct number? It's not there. Why not? Well, unfortunately, because this person's crazy. Or all 3 of these people are crazy. 3 out of the 5 are crazy. What? That doesn't sound very plausible. Courts are going to have to sort that stuff out. Are you kidding? 3 out of 5 are insane in more than one county or even at the state level? Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Damn. This is going to take a while. So that's what underlies this whole thing. And it just takes a certain number of crazy people, sometimes just one, to throw everything into disarray. And if there's one at every level, God help you. And if the Secretary of State is an elected lunatic like you might have in some other states, apparently you don't have it in Georgia, then what do you do? And if you have a campaign that's run by people who say, F the whole thing, just forge electoral college certificates. I mean, I've said it 100 times, and I can't hammer the fact home hard enough how crazy, how egregious this crime is. But I guess having just once again gone through the whole process, if the precinct people swear on the Bible or whatever the hell we're supposed to swear on in order to make sure that it's really, 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 really true, or that we'll be punished if it's not, and the county people swear that it's all true and everything they got from, that they believe everything that they got from the precinct people, and then they did their best with the math, and this is what they believe, and they send it on to the state people, and they swear that this is all true. And then based on that, the electors meet, and the electors cast their votes, and then state officials say, I saw them check the IDs of the people coming in saying they were electors. I watched them say one by one who they were voting for. I watched them sign the certificate that said that this was who they were voting for. I saw them sign all 7 copies, which go to the courthouse and the Congress and the archives and everybody. And I swear that these are the exact certificates that they signed, and I send them to the Vice President of the United States, care of the Senate, and then they count them up, right? All of that is out the window. That whole process is out the window because some people, idiots somewhere, said, we can make our own certificate based on no promises from the state, no promises from the governor, no promises from the county registrars and the people counting, no promises from the precinct people, just us saying, we think the Electoral College came out this way, despite all the reporting that it came out that way, despite the number of people who swore on penalty of perjury that it came out that way. We still say it came out the other way. And we think if we give these certificates to the Vice President of the United States, he'll say, to hell with all the people who swore the opposite. I, too, believe in lizard people, and this is the way the Electoral College... Well, what happens? Well, then you go to the very august Congress of the United States. The House of Representatives will debate. Well, what do we think about the fact that all these people swore this, but then people we know typed something up on WordPerfect that said it was something else? What do we make of that? Well, if you're talking about the Freedom Caucus wackadoodles in Congress, they might swear to anything. And apparently some of them really thought that was going to work. I don't know. That seems a little crazy to me. Seems like a pretty egregious crime. Not just, well, we gave it a shot, or, well, these are alternative electors, or, well, we forged it, but it's not like anybody's going to believe it. They were attempting to supplant it would be like showing up and saying, at the Supreme Court and saying, the Constitution that you guys think is the Constitution. I discovered the actual real Constitution just the other day. It was in my attic, and it says, I'm right about this case. And it would be like the Supreme Court saying, wow, this is a different copy of but it looks like it's on old paper. We should meet to decide whether or not this is the Constitution or the other one that's in the archives and has been printed 100 times, and the one we studied in law school is the Constitution. It's that insane. Sorry. Well, anyway, what's the Brennan Center for Justice doing about that? Right, as we said, certification, which we just explained, is at the center of all of this. And now immediately after an election takes place, right, they say, poll workers and local election officials begin a rigorous multi-step process, we just talked about it, to accurately determine the results. Once the results have been tabulated and verified, local officials certify or sign off on the completion of the process. The sign-off is not intended to verify the vote count, but rather to confirm that they did their best with it, essentially. And here's the results we got. You may count later and find a difference. You may count later and find no difference. But this is what we did. I'm swearing to that. Local certifying officials must follow detailed state statutes and regulations when they certify. And those frameworks establish that they must leave any allegation of fraud, even if they totally believe it, to the courts. Now, this is where we have a problem. A case out of Fulton County, Georgia, seeks to change this. A Republican member of the Fulton County Board of Elections and Registration, Julie Adams, refused to certify the county's May 2024 primary election based on unspecified, quote, discrepancies. Why won't you sign? She didn't say lizard people. She said, I think there are discrepancies. What discrepancy? The numbers all match. I don't know. I'm not sure what discrepancy means. I was told that if I thought there was discrepancies, I could withhold my signature. Well, you were wrong. Well, I'm going to say that I'm right, and I'm going to sue you to show that I'm right, and we'll see. She then filed a lawsuit against the board and Fulton County's election director, arguing that as a local election official, she has discretion to refuse to certify the results until the defendants provide her with troves of election data to investigate the election. Her complaint asks the court to force the board to turn over countless documents and rewrite the law to give her a green light to refuse to certify the election results. Well, on July 22nd, the defendants filed a motion to dismiss Adams' complaint. On July 29th, the Brennan Center and co-counsel filed a friend of the court brief in support of the defendants on behalf of the Georgia State Conference of the NAACP, Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, League of Women Voters of Georgia, League of Women Voters of Atlanta, Fulton County, etc., etc. The brief raises 3 important points to ensure that voters are represented in a case that could affect whether their legally cast ballots will count. First, the brief contextualizes Adams' lawsuit within the history of election certification in the United States. I've helped you with that. For as long as our country has held elections, rogue election officials, local officials, have attempted to manipulate and interfere with the process to benefit their political agendas. And in response, state legislatures and courts, including Georgia's Supreme Court, have consistently taken pains to spell out that certification is a mandatory, non-discretionary duty. This lawsuit raises precisely the scenario they have sought to avoid. Second, the brief shows that this effort to interfere with Fulton County certification process is just the latest tactic in the ongoing election denier movement. Adams' case is one of many recent attempts to interfere with local certification processes across the country, each of which amplifies distrust in our election system and disrupts the careful balance and timeline of the election administration cycle. Third, the brief emphasizes the danger that discretionary certification process poses to voters. Granting local officials free rein to refuse to certify results risks disenfranchising Fulton County's hundreds of thousands of voters, a result that would disproportionately harm the 60% of Fulton County residents who are people of color. Indeed, this case is simply the latest iteration of a long-standing effort to use Fulton County and its diverse communities of color as scapegoats for the broader election denier movement. The court is expected to rule on the defendant's motion to dismiss in the coming months. It's quite a while. But I understand that they expect the ruling quite soon, maybe even as soon as today. This, of course, was published July 29th, so it's been a little while, almost a month since we heard from them. And, well, like I said, there's yet more about Georgia. We might as well just concentrate on Georgia for the moment. Let's see. There was the, let's see, where's my, I thought I had easily at hand, something on what's up in Georgia. Ah, yes, ProPublica weighed in on the Georgia situation just yesterday and has the update about what's happening there. Election deniers, as we know already, secretly pushed a rule that would make it easier to delay certification of Georgia's election results. That's the problem. But the time may be running out on them because the subheader says on Monday, and that's today, the GOP-controlled state election board is poised to adopt this new rule. So we won't hear from the courts today necessarily, but that is set to come soon. But today, the state election board ready to actually adopt this rule in the face of all the opposition to it, which would potentially allow county officials, including one who secretly backed the rule, to throw the election results of the swing state into chaos this fall. Doug Bach-Clark is the writer for ProPublica, taking this on from their perspective. But I suspect that we have heard what we need to hear about this. It's just the news bit of it here is that on Monday, the state election board will, I guess, see how far they can go. That happens today. That would give the county election board members an additional avenue to delay certification of election results, potentially allowing them to throw the state's vote count into chaos. A former Fulton County election official who submitted an initial draft of the rule told ProPublica that she had done so at the behest of a regional leader of a right-wing organization involved in challenging the legitimacy of American election systems. That organization, the Election Integrity Network, is led by Cleta Mitchell, the lunatic lawyer who was on the phone with Trump calling Brad Raffensperger on January 3rd, 2021, asking them to just find 11,870 votes. And Cleta helped orchestrate attempts to overturn that election, they helpfully tell us, and spoke on the call in which former President Donald Trump demanded the Georgia Secretary of State find him 11,780, I think I said 870, votes to undo Joe Biden's victory. The Election Integrity Network's role, it's a nice name for people who are trying to steal elections, in bringing forward the proposed rule has not been previously reported, so now it has been, or they've reported it, and I've told you about it. The state election board's Monday meeting comes on the heels of a vote less than 2 weeks before that empowered county election board members to conduct, quote, reasonable inquiry into allegations of voting irregularities. That rule did not set deadlines for how long such inquiries might last or describe what they might entail, and critics worried that this omission could cause Georgia to miss the December 11th deadline for sending its certified presidential election results to the federal government, such that the electors would be eligible to sit again on December 14th to cast those votes. The new rule is even more concerning, election experts said, because it requires county boards to investigate discrepancies, requires an investigation, between the number of ballots cast and the number of people who voted in a precinct, no matter how minor. There was a discrepancy of 1, can't possibly change the outcome of the results because the margin is in the thousands, doesn't matter, must investigate. It bars counties from certifying the election tallies until officials can review an investigation of every precinct with inconsistent totals. Such inconsistencies are commonplace, not evidence of malfeasance, and only in extremely rare circumstances affect the outcome of elections. The requirements to explain every one of them and litigation around investigations into them could take far longer than the time allowed by law to certify. Why does that not bother them? Well, if it gets to the point where Georgia can't send its electoral votes, it is they think more likely both that that will be happening in other states as well, and that no one will then have 270 electoral votes, and why Congress will say we don't have to deny the outcome. We'd simply have to show, sorry, there's like 4, 5, 10 states that just have refused to certify and therefore have no valid electoral college votes to send us. Nobody has 270. Even though it was an overwhelming win for Kamala Harris, we're going to vote by state. And if things work out their way, they'll have more state delegations who vote for Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. And what are you going to do? The Constitution says it. I hope nobody else shows up with a different draft of the Constitution and says that it says otherwise. That would be crazy. Well, anyway, the bottom line here. I'm sorry. I didn't want to skip this part. If this rule is adopted, any claims of fraud, any claims of discrepancies, good or bad, valid or not, could be the basis for a county board member acting in bad faith to say, I'm not confident in the results. You just say the magic words. I feel personally threatened. I'm in danger. I feel like my life is in danger. I can shoot everybody. Well, I'm not confident in the results. Well, to hell with the election then. And hold up certification under the flimsiest of pretexts, said Ben Berwick, who leads the election law and litigation team of Protect Democracy, a nonprofit that works to protect the integrity of American elections. Just like the name says. Even though the Election Integrity Network doesn't. That's odd. Anyhow, the bottom line here, Berwick said, is that election deniers are intentionally creating a failure point in the process where they can interfere if they don't like the results of an election. Until 2020, the certification of elections was a non-controversial part of running them. After Trump made Stop the Steal a rallying cry in his attempt to overturn his loss to Biden, an increasing number of conservative election board members, especially at the county level, have attempted to block certification of subsequent elections. ProPublica has previously reported how these disruptions revealed weaknesses in the nation's electoral system. Now, we overhauled the counting of the electoral votes in Congress, but we didn't overhaul this. They're the ones overhauling the county processes. Oh, no. Among those who would have the ability to slow down the count in the fall is Julie Adams, the Republican member of the Fulton County Elections Board, and regional coordinator with Mitchell's Election Integrity Network, in case that's any sort of concern for anybody. She was sworn into the Fulton Board in February, and one of her first official acts was to vote against the certification of the March presidential primary, saying she needed more information to investigate those discrepancies that she thought she saw. She was overruled by her colleagues and then sued the county and the board, asking for the court to find that her duties, such as certification, are in fact discretionary and not ministerial. That suit is still ongoing. State election boards received the proposed rule in April from Vernetta Nureddin, I guess, a former member of the Fulton County Elections Board. In an interview on Friday, Nureddin acknowledged that Adams brought that particular concern to her and was instrumental in bringing that rule and several others to the board. Nureddin's packet of paperwork asking for consideration of the rule, a cover letter, said that in this packet, the letter said that the Election Research Institute respectfully submits this petition for adoption. Well, they say it, but they don't mean it. The Election Research Institute is led by Heather Honey. Really? Okay. A conservative activist who also played a role in attempts to discredit the 2020 election results and has worked to advance election system overhauls supported by Mitchell, the head of the Election Integrity Network, CLEDA, Another organization Honey co-founded, Verity Vote, why not have 15 of them, is listed as working on joint projects and events with the Election Integrity Network and its handbook. Mitchell has praised Honey as a wonderful person on her podcast. Honey told ProPublica that her institute did not submit the proposed rule. The Election Research Institute, like many, nonprofits out there, have folks that have expertise in elections, Honey said in a brief interview, and so it is not uncommon for folks to seek our advice. When asked about the language identifying the institute as submitting it, she said she would only answer further questions over email and then hung up. Honey did not respond to an emailed list of detailed questions. So you can see these people are not really all that skilled in the whole certification thing. Did you submit this brief? No. Well, the brief says that you submitted the brief. Well, Yeah. All right. So you have a discrepancy here. Are we going to have an investigation of that discrepancy? No. That we're not going to investigate. That you have to adjudicate, and I'm not answering any more questions. Click. Okay, fine. Well, so they're not the most perfectly consistent people in the world. We're not going to be able to make it all the way through the rest of the ProPublica piece. But just, I think I wanted to drive home with all of these things. One, that people are paying attention at the news organizations, and that's good. Two, that Georgia seems to have maybe, we think, decent people at the top of the structure in terms of elections officials. Brad Raffensperger, Brian Kemp. Much is made of the fact that they refused to help Trump in 2020. Trump makes much of the fact that they refused to help him in 2020 and attacks them. And, but at the same time, I remind you once again, that this was a refusal that they grounded in not having certain, legal avenues open to them. And it is the intention of some of these elections officials acting in the local and county level in Georgia and at the state legislature to convince these officials that they do have this latitude now. I don't think that Raffensperger and Kemp think that they have any new latitude in January. I don't think that has changed. I think what does change is they're going to be handed a much shorter list of counties that have in fact complied with the certification process, and it's going to be up to them to decide what that means going forward. Can the electors for Kamala Harris, if it comes to it, for Georgia, legally convene and call themselves the electors for Georgia if Brad Raffensperger and or Brian Kemp think that some crucial number of counties are missing and missing for good enough reason that they refuse to certify the votes cast by the Electoral College on December 14th. What does that do to things? They're just backing up the process to an earlier point in at the precinct and county level rather than trying to pull it off in Congress.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, I think we've explained it about as clearly as it can get, even though it's not very clear feeling. But I think you get figured out by now what exactly is happening and who's to blame. We're going to hand things over to Justice Putnam from the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which, as always, follows us right here on Netroots Radio. Stay tuned for his take on Monday and the weird weekend that just passed.